with perhaps the exception of Julius, because I think you underestimate how frustrating it is on a daily basis to not be able to park. And while I absolutely accept all you've said about how it's a very big problem and it's got to be thought out citywide, I fail to see when other central wards have got some control, why we in Newnham can't do anything and are expected to just wait 10, 20 years until the whole of Cambridge transport is sorted before we can park on our doorsteps. Towards the end of Elstone Road, just last week, there's a whole load more double yellows painted so that the refuse vans can get in, absolutely necessary. But, you know, I take my children to school, I come back, I'm driving down the road behind this wretched French car who parks there, the young woman gets off, walks through the woods. I mean, it just drives me crazy. And as a Newnham resident, I'm going to vote for whoever is going to actually get on and do something, because we can't wait 20 years.
Who would like to go first on that one? Lucy?
I'm itching to pick this one up because I've been realising that I haven't actually told you what we've done about resident parking already. So, when I first became a councillor in Newnham about 7 years ago, when we went round and knocked on doors, there was not a massive consensus in favour of residents parking. There were very, very mixed views, and over the subsequent 7 years, that balance has changed significantly. So about 18 months ago, Rod and I did a consultation in the Croft, because you're not allowed to ask for residents parking until you've consulted the residents to make sure that they actually want it. And then, after you've done that consultation, then the County Council will come and do their consultation. But they won't do their consultation until you can demonstrate that you've done yours. So we did our consultation about 18 months ago on parking in the Croft, and the results of that consultation were that there was a majority of people in the Croft who were in favour of limited residence parking, not necessarily 9 to 5. So Rod and I then went back to the County Council and we said there is a majority of people in the Croft in favour of residence parking for limited hours. And the County Council said you can't have limited hours. So that was the first battle that we had to do. Why did we ask?
Who did you ask?
Who did we ask? Well, there have been various officers, because the officers...
I don't think anyone's been asked. So who did you consult?
There was yes, it was. Yeah. There was a letter that went through, it should have gone through the doors of everybody in the Croft area. So anyway, I'm sorry if you didn't get one. There should have been one, but it was a while ago. When we went back to the County Council again, they then said, all right, but you can't just have that area, because if you just introduce residence parking in the Croft, then you will just shift the problem further out. So they asked us to go away and consult with Fulbrook Road, Selwyn Road and Granchester Road. So we have now done that consultation with Fulbrook Road, Selwyn Road and Granchester Road. There is support for residence parking in those areas. It's not as strong as it is in the Croft. But we will now go back to the County Council and, with luck, ask them. Although, actually, this was the plan. Unfortunately, the Labour-dominated City Council parking group have said that they will not do any formal consultation on any residence parking at the moment, because they are doing a whole city parking review. So our parking consultation, which I had hoped to do on it for the Croft and Selwyn Road and Fulbrook Road, has now been put on hold until the report from the from CJAC is received, and which I think probably won't be that long. So I really hope that there will be potential to do that. But we've done a lot of work on this. We are really trying, Catherine, and I'm really sorry that it hasn't got there yet.
Okay, so maybe Ewan would like to pick that one up then.
I'm not sure everything was accurate about that, but I think that you can tell that there's some excuses for why things haven't happened for a long time. And I think that you can also see that Labour is actually doing something. So if you get a Labour voice in Newnham as well, with the 7-point plan, there is a consultation. There's going to be a citywide scheme, and there's going to be local decision making within it to get something done. And so
Where?
well, I mean, it's going
When
to.
you say a citywide scheme, what do you mean by a citywide scheme?
Well, so there's going to be a citywide plan for looking at how parking can work right across the city, but there's going to be delegation to local residents within that. And so that's simply point number 4 of the 7-point plan, and it's actually going to happen.
Excuse me, I think we want to know here how long, if we demonstrate a majority in favour of residents parking, be it limited or full, we want to know what is the time lapse between that majority being presented and it actually happening.
Look, I think that...
Certainly, you're talking about waffling about committees and consultations. When will it take place?
Well, one of the ironies, and this is what I said right at the beginning, is that we're having a city council candidate meeting over something where it's actually the county council where Lucy is sitting. And so there's this crazy system where, you know, for one bit of what's happening in our communities, it's a city problem, but for another part, it's the county problem.
Why is it a crazy system? Why don't you have a non-crazy system?
Because we need an Act of Parliament to change the system where we just have one council for Cambridge, and the current administration won't do that.
I think that we can see...
If we want to introduce parking, why can't we just do it?
Well, it seems that...
Who are the obstacles?
George Osborne.
It's simply a technical matter of looking at how the legislation is working, and they're putting forward the proposal and getting it through, and I don't know why it hasn't been done already.
Okay, Mark, would you like to say something?
Yes, it's very important to set a principle here, actually, which is one of integrity, and it has to be. Just a question to Lucy: how long have I been campaigning here for residents' parking? How many years? I'm sorry. You have the emails. You have the detail. I've done the surveys. How many years is it?
Longer than I've lived in Newnham now, I think.
It's a long time.
Yes, it is.
And what we have is, if we have in action, it's quite true. And it is very simple and straightforward to do. It isn't as complicated as it seems to be. Hence, residents parking in other parts. We probably could wait for a citywide scheme. But for the moment, it's getting worse. And remember, it's the county officers we're dealing with. We're not dealing with politicians here. We're dealing with traffic engineers who are flat earthers. They're flat earthers. They don't see any further than a bollard or a bus. That's who we're dealing with, and we've got to get on top of that. I went to see them, and I've started a process. That process has got to continue. I would love to know how many people here don't have a car.
How many have two?
Well, how many? Better still, if you're prepared to admit it, how many here have three or more? I'm sorry, and I think it's that sort of basic data that we need to be able to take forward to get this residents parking in the next 12 months.
Okay, thank you.
Just 60 seconds. So forgive me, ignorance is bliss. I don't know about committees, councillors, officers. I just live in Newnham. I sometimes can't park my car. I hear the frustrations. I see people driving around, and Ed will confirm, actually, just driving around finding a parking space causes congestion. So, sorry, I'm not prepared to wait. I'm not prepared for a citywide scheme, because I know, as we've just heard, other parts of Cambridge may not agree. So we'll have to wait and we'll have to consult. It must be done, and we've got to be able to do it quicker. And believe you me, we work in a social media age. Do you not think the person in the Paris flat going, I'm going to Cambridge next week, I'm just going to look on TripAdvisor, I'm going to look on social media, and they're going to say, hey, there's a new place called Newnham, come and park there. You've got a beautiful walk into town, and this is why you're seeing your friend, you're being frustrated behind the French car. So, it's got to happen quickly.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, no.
I'm very interested to know how the travel did it.
Yes.
And the market traders, I know, all parking the travel.
Okay.
Before the travel became...
So now they can't.
That's right. I was
Okay.
wondering how it's going to be... We need somewhere for market traders. Obviously, we want our market.
Can I just tie that in with the question that a couple of other people have asked? I mean, this issue about, okay, we're saying we don't want all these commuters in Newnham, but a lot of these people are, for example, shop workers who are working here, people, somebody asked me about carers, people who are working, for example, tradespeople. What about them? So questions about that. What do you think? Yeah.
Do you mind if I just make a last comment?
Yeah.
Before I am going to have to rush. It's just getting more heated, actually.
Just getting fun.
Similar to Julius, I haven't been on the committees and stuff. I'm not I know some of the officers, I don't know all the officers on the council, can think outside the box here. If I was elected, I'd work with you, come down, we can get this information together. Let's start thinking out direct action, let's start using new talk of social media. That's the way to put pressure on people like in councils and officers. They don't like bad publicity. Let's give them a bit of a, excuse my French, ball lick, Let's have a petition, let's make a few protests. There are things we can do to really shake things up, and then that would put pressure particularly on the county council. So it doesn't always have to be through the normal channels, and that's something the Green Party often does outside. You've seen us on the fracking protest and stuff. If something needs to get done, and every single time we're faced with this obstacle saying, but there's this rule here and you've got this, we have to do something. I'm happy to think outside the box and try something like that. So I'm going to throw that out to you. Thank you for inviting me today. Sorry I couldn't say more or stay longer, but thank you very much.
Okay, well, we have got time for a few more questions for the people who are still in the hot seat here. Yeah, okay.
I just wanted to say that it's not that long ago that Newnham was voted the second nicest place to live in the country. And actually, I feel very proud of living in Newnham, and I want it to stay. Yeah. I'd like it to be the nicest place, obviously. But the quality of life of people who are living in Newnham is being eroded on a daily basis. Yeah. I live in Grantchester Street. And when I get ready for work in the morning, at about 7 o'clock, I see people, the same people, parking in the street, vans full of people, getting out, HVVs, all walking into town. Loud pop music, 7 o'clock in the morning, it makes the street horrendous, and I think we need to think about what people who live here want and need.
I will, just briefly. I mean, it's important to think about the background. Edward said it in his speech. You start with Conservative, Liberal, Democrat coalitions in Westminster bringing us into an age of austerity, an incompetent economic plan which has knock-on effects into the council. You have the county council introducing charges on park and rides, and that's when we see the real congestion in Newnham increasing. So I think it's really important not to sort of, we can't just separate what's happening in Newnham out from the wider picture. And so, it's a Labour council that's going to deliver a solution, and that's what we're already doing. And I just can't understand why the county council has let it get this way.
Quickly.
Yes, I'll try and be quick. On the issue of wanting to get on with something quickly, I absolutely sympathise with that, and I really hope that the Labour-run City Council committee will lift its ban on putting forward individual schemes so that we can get on with this one, as we were hoping to as soon as the election is over. Even if we are able to do that, it will still take, I would guess, a year to 18 months before something can be implemented. And I'm sorry to have to say that, but that's just. It took us 2 years to get yellow lines in North Newnham on the corners, because the process does take time, and there is no point pretending that it's going to be done overnight, because it isn't. But it will only be done in that time if we can get on with it as quickly as we can.
What ban on individual schemes? It's not. It's simply not true.
They've all been suspended.
I'm sorry, that's just not true.
Well, that's what we've been told.
Well,
And given that I'm the county councillor and the county councillor for Queen Edith's has also been told the same thing, I don't know where your information is coming from. It's not a city council, it's a county council. Fine. Well, we're doing the best we can. Can I just pick up on the park and ride issue, with which I totally agree with you? Both the Labour and the Liberal Democrat groups opposed the park and ride charge all the way through. It was pushed through by Conservatives and UKIP, who don't have any seats in the city, they just leave them outside. And so I think there is total unanimity in the city that we want those the parking charges at the park and ride scrapped. They can't be scrapped at any cost. They have to be scrapped in the right way. At the moment, there is a proposal that those park and ride, the parking charge at the parking rides be scrapped and be put on to the fare for the people who travel in. which would then mean that the fares for the people who travel in will go up by £1, and that's per person rather than per car. It completely removes any incentive for people to car share, and it increases the cost for people commuting. So it has to be scrapped, but it has to be scrapped in the right way. I would really like to see the parking charges from the city being used to subsidise the park and ride service. So that's something we will be pushing.
Okay, thank you. Right, we've got time for another couple of questions. If anyone wants to... Oh, you wanted to ask me? Yeah?
Oh, I was just asking, given that there seems to be a consensus that we want it, why not just impose it? Forget the consultation. Oxford, for example, or London. I just don't... Has anyone checked legally whether you need to consult? I can't really...
Yes.
Have you checked that?
Yes.
Have you spoken to the people who did it in the Carpen area? How they
It took them 5 years.
Sorry.
But how long have we been doing this that 5 years already?
Well, okay. Sorry. You want... And then...
People don't hate me here, but there's a doubt, and then a constructive suggestion. I worry that, and we also mean we don't like, well, we say we'd love to have a 1 hour restricted parking. It's brilliant. I mean, then our visitors, our carers, our tradesmen, ourselves, we can park, and the commuters couldn't. But you say that's not as easy as it sounds, and I can imagine that you might need 10,000 traffic wardens if you were going to police it across Cambridge. So firstly, I would really be interested to know what's the problem, and so rather than being naive and thinking we could have 1 hour restricted parking. Secondly, a constructive suggestion. We need the money in order to be able to remove the charges from the car, from the park and ride. Have you noticed those white lines around you, where people have basically privatised a bit of the pavement in order to say, I want to be able to park access into my garage? Yeah. You can do that. It's, I think, 150 quid. And you can then stop anybody else parking there forever. That's not fair. It should be at least 150 quid a year.
Jean, sorry. And I shouldn't put my hand up to ask you a question, but about the 10,000 traffic wardens, for an hour, even if you had it, but let's just say to him, you only need the traffic warden to come for that hour, right? So it breaks up the day so commuters can't park. The 9 to 5, you do need the 10,000 traffic wardens. It's incredibly costly because you've got to, it's no point in having it if you're not going to enforce it. You need the traffic warden to be able to come in at any point during that. So having the hours should be more logical to be able to get it in more quickly.
Because everywhere in Cambridge, we're saying we've got restricted parking between 12 and 1. They've got to do that.
So, you saw the map, most of them have already got it.
What do the traffic wardens do for the other 7,000?
Sorry, I think Edward wants to come in on that. That's a good question.
Well, you'd have the one guy going around.
Okay. So we're asking about, can this 1 hour in the day parking work, and what is the problem about traffic wardens? Are we going to need 10,000 traffic wardens to police it throughout the whole city?
So why don't we charge people annually if their white lines are...
Okay, that's another question, yeah. 2 questions.
Just on the how to patrol an hour restriction, you do it the smart way. You actually zone it so that neighbouring zones are consecutive hours. Mm-hmm. So you have, say, 10 to 11 in one zone, then the next zone is 11 to 12, then the next one is 12 to 1, and the next one is 1 to 2. And so that means you probably only need maybe 2 wardens who do one area for that hour, they then move on to the next area for an hour, and then they go on to the next area for an hour. Whereas in the centre of the city, that warden has to keep coming back to the same area over and over again in order to enforce it for the 9 to 5 or 9 till 8. So actually, you should be able to do it with far fewer wards. And there are plenty of cities in the country where this is done. I mean, it's done in wards, boroughs of London, it's done in smaller cities too. So it can work, but it has to be organised in such a way as to make it work. Because I believe in Brighton, they didn't organise it very well, and they've sort of concluded actually it's not that much cheaper to do. But I'm not, there's a lot of murkiness about the accounting for parking controls anyway.
Okay, thank you. Julius, you wanted to come in on that, did you? Yeah.
No, I just think I think as you say, if you zone it, it's possible, but I just cannot believe. Now I'm not sure. I do think you need to consult, but that should be pretty quick, I would have thought, and given the majority of people in this room want it to happen, it's what happens at that point. So let's start it now.
We want benevolent leadership, not consultation.
That's a slippery slope, but that's for another hustings.
We don't live in a participatory democracy. We're not asked our opinions on every matter in society. We need a bit of benevolence. Let's go first.
I just wanted to say that I've been following this very carefully, and I went to Charles for what I thought was the presentation of the review of parking issues. And it was reported in the paper what everybody felt at the time. It was really pretty inadequate. So I don't know if it's ongoing or being redone or whatever. I then followed up when I was at the Guildhall, when an accountant had looked into some of the analysis that had been presented at Shire Hall and questioned it very, very carefully and in detailed fashion. So I don't know what's been done as a result of that. I haven't heard an official rebuttal of those questions about actually the legality of the way in which the analysis of revenues versus cost has been done.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I can't help with the accountant in the Guildhall issue because I don't know what that was. I can't respond on the accountant in the Guildhall issue because I wasn't there for that meeting. The parking review one, I wasn't at that meeting either, but I do know about it, and that is the review that is going on at the moment, the citywide parking review, which has meant that other things have got paused. Just to respond on the 1 hour question, I have been told that we can't have 1 hour for the reasons about the enforceability of it. That it would be really, really difficult to get people to enforce 1 hour. We were originally told you have to have 9 to 5, and when De Freville Avenue were having their endless battles with it, that was partly because they were told they were only allowed to have residence parking if they had it from 9 to 5. And we have now persuaded the county council to reduce that. So in fact, the last conversation I had with them, they would allow 3 hours. They wouldn't go under 3 hours, but they would say, so we could have from 11 till 2 or something. So that's the current position that I haven't managed to negotiate with the county council officers. But one of the things that it's important to remember is that the county council officers are responsible to the county council. The county council is almost, I mean, it's not quite a Conservative majority, but it's nearly a Conservative majority. And it is not, so getting things through the county council, changing parking policies, because they're to make them better suited to residents in Cambridge, is not that easy. You can't just say, we want to do this and go ahead and do it, because actually the officers take their instructions from a county council committee that has, on which city residents don't have a majority. So it's difficult to get them to change the policies. But we're getting there. We've made slow progress from 9 to 5 to 3 hours, so that's in the right direction.
Can I just ask you, what is the big objection then to enforcing it in 1 hour? It does seem to most people, I think, that would actually be a lot easier to enforce than whole day or 3 hours.
As I understand it, their perception is that would then mean that you would have to get traffic wardens to a particular area for a given time. And that if you, one of the other issues is... the county council well, if you'd like to sign up, that would be marvellous.
Is that the main reason? That they wouldn't be able to get there?
That they wouldn't be able to enforce it. As I understand it, that is... Oh, actually, there is one other reason. The other reason, and I don't... The other reason is that they don't believe that people would be willing to pay £80 a year to have residence parking for only 1 hour. Now, I don't know whether they're right about that, but if you reduce... So at the moment, you pay £80 a year for a 9 to 5 residence parking, so you get your parking space. They don't think that you would be willing to pay that much for only 1 hour's worth of guaranteed residence parking. And therefore, they think you would have to reduce the cost of residence parking, and therefore it would not cover its costs. So that's the other reason.
Well, I mean, it seems to me that residence parking doesn't mean actually that you get your place in front of your house anyway. I mean, the main problem for us here is that commuters parking means that we can't park. So 1 hour a day would stop the commuters. So we would be able to park. So I think people would be happy to pay. I don't think this is a question of if you're doing 9 till 5, you're getting better value for money.
But again, you'd have to consult whether people would be able to do that. But that's their argument.
You would have to consult result.
You would have.
People are saying, yeah, we want it, you know. Yeah. Sorry, I shouldn't have
Who probably had increased their car ownership and car usage over the last period, feel totally blameless.
Yes.
Now, do we have any data, for example, on the growth of households with more than one car? We're talking about restrictions on blanket coverage, 9 to 5, say, with a residence permit scheme. Could it be limited to one permit per household? So that households who use more than their share of community resource should be limited. Because actually the frontages of the houses in Newnham are not very large, and they are not suited to double car ownership or triple car ownership.
Okay, that's it.
Since the issue of pricing was raised, I was just interested to get a show of hands. I mean, we've heard the figure of £80 a year being mentioned for residence parking. Could I just have a show of hands how many people would be prepared to pay £80 a year? So everyone, that's good.
We're done, everyone. Down to the red.
Yeah, I mean, that's great.
Is that the consultation?
But the next question is, I mean, I don't know about how many schemes across Britain are having a charge for residence parking, but I know in Germany, in Holland, usually a residence parking scheme would be free. Right. So if I asked for a show of hands, how many people would like to have a residence parking scheme that did not have a price on it for people, maybe with a limitation for the number of cars that you own per household? Is there any sort of technical reason why that could not be accomplished? And then the charge would actually be for people who were using the parking spaces in a way that was congested.
Councillor Francis Burkitt of South Cambridgeshire District Council made this point very, very clear at a City Deal meeting, Gina, actually you chaired, at the rugby club. And he said what would be unacceptable to people in South Cambridgeshire outside of the city is if all of you lot got a free residence parking permit scheme and they had to pay for it. Now, I often go to county council meetings just to stare in the eyes of UKIP councillors. No, seriously, I think on a more serious point is you get a feel for the pressures that they have out there and the reasons why they vote the way that they do. That ultimately causes problems for yourselves here and also in my part of town in Queen Edith's and Coleridge, where we've got commuter parking for Addenbrooks, which is causing very similar problems that you're experiencing here that we discussed in the similar hustings last week. Just out of interest, how many of you in this audience feel that you understand the systems and processes of how the councils work? Because none of the candidates here, and I'm interested to see what you see on this, is, and Mr. Margot, nobody's talked about campaigning to change the systems and processes to simplify them so that it doesn't have to take 5 years to get your schemes.
So I've learned some things, and I keep hearing at a number of meetings, officers say this, officers say that, officers say the other thing. Officers work for you, and officers take their instruction from councillors. So don't ever let an officer tell you what you can and can't do. They're there to guide, they're there to advise, but they're there to take instruction on behalf of residents.
Okay, we can have just one more question and then we do need to finish. Yeah, so John?
I've been knocking on doors in the interest of local government for maybe it's 5 or 6 years now, and I think there's clearly a strong feeling amongst this particular audience that we just ought to get on and have residence parking. But I think one has to appreciate that point of view is pretty recent. Certainly, if you go back to 2010, there was only a minority in favour of residence parking, and about 5 years ago, I'm not quite sure when, there was a formal consultation in Newnham about residence parking, and there was a majority against. And knocking on doors every year since 2010, it's been striking how in the last 2 years, and particularly this year, opinion has strikingly changed. And almost everyone you talk to says that parking is almost the number one issue, and there seems to be a majority of people in favour of residence parking now. But even now, you know, over the last few weeks knocking on doors, it does critically depend on which streets you're in and who you're talking to, because there is still a minority of people who are strongly opposed to residence parking because they don't use their cars during the day, and commuter parking doesn't really affect them, and they don't see why they should pay £80 a year for having their car sit outside the house when it sits outside the house perfectly happily anyway. So I would strongly support Edward's proposal that there is a proper consultation, but we should get on with it. And I'm quite amused, actually, that this evening I get the impression that Labour is being criticised for wanting to have a proper consultation on the issue, which I think is essential, really. But the Lib Dems clearly think there's votes to be had in putting it around that Labour is going to force residence parking on people without giving them any say in the matter.
I think what irritates people in this room is the constant tying it in with party politics. We don't care what party you vote for, what care. It shouldn't have anything to do with national politics. Parking in Newnham is a parking in Newnham issue only, and it's very irritating to hear you scoring petty political points off each other. You know, we've heard you do this. We've heard your waffle. We've heard your manifestos. We just want to know when it will happen, when we get the majority, when will it happen. And thank you very much for organising this evening, whoever did. Thank you for your time, you speakers. But what will happen? Let this meeting not be wasted. Let something happen.